McDaniel can't move on it. Now he does. The shot, passing down. Rebound, score!
Hi, welcome to the Toe and the Crease podcast, where we talk about anything and everything to do with the NHL. Again, I'm SJ.
Willie Dubs here. What's up, everyone? How y'all doing?
And we're kind of in the weird midway point of the season, a little post after the holidays. I hope everyone had a good holidays. I don't know how much, what do you watch during the holidays, just out of curiosity? Are you a big Christmas movie guy or no?
I'm not really a movie person at all. I just don't watch movies in general, and I guess Christmas movies never really intrigued me. No, not really.
Okay, if you had a favorite movie of all time, or top 2, top 3, what would you say?
Maybe I'm just weird, but do you remember the original Tron movie?
Yes. It's not that it's weird. It just caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting that answer, to be honest.
What got me into it was I watched Tron Legacy, which was like the newer one, the 2010 one. I think this is with his quote unquote Kevin Flynn's like son.
Yeah.
But then I
saw that one. That's the one with Olivia Wilde, I think.
Yeah. So I saw the new one, and I was like, I think I have to see the old one just because I need to see what the difference is. I think I actually preferred the old one compared to the new one. The new one felt kind of, I don't know, not cheesy, but It was kind of predictable.
What did you like? What makes it your favorite, I guess, is my question here.
Okay, so funny thing. I think when I grew up, I don't know if you played a lot of those online games, like the snake game, game where you have to like...
Dude, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to age myself here. The only online games I ever played was the computer, the free computer games you got when you got computers.
Was it the
Solitaire,
pinball,
the
Minesweeper,
pinball,
Minesweeper too.
Minesweeper, pinball, Spider Solitaire.
Did you ever win at Minesweeper?
So I did, and the small ones, the big ones, no shot. I'd never.
Oh yeah, the big ones I never won.
Close.
So
I won what one or two small ones by total fluke.
I don't know what it was, but I just never was good at Minesweeper. I think it's honestly just pure luck, but that's what it is. Back to the original Tron movie. I don't know, just something about the. I know it's like an older movie, but then I thought it looked kind of like they tried their best to make, because the Tron world's supposed to be like this new age kind of world, right? I thought it just looked kind of cool, just because given their time and everything. The characters look a little goofy.
And it kind of feels very Atari-like in a way, right?
Yeah, I have a nostalgia for the old video games. I don't get to play a lot of them, but nostalgia for them for sure.
Now, for me, I'd say my one take with Christmas movies is I can almost never watch them a second time. What I don't get is the people who legit will watch the same Christmas movie year after year after year. So, one of my friends, Chris, he'll watch, I think it's Miracle on 34th. Oh, okay. Yeah, he'll watch that. He'll watch, the Santa Claus. He'll watch them every year, and I don't get it. To me, it's once you've seen it and you remember it, so maybe you watch a second time because you don't remember it. But if you every year, it's you know what happens.
Isn't that the same philosophy with rewatching TV shows? I find a lot of people just rewatch the same shows over and over, but doesn't it just get repetitive once you know what's going to happen? Because when I watch Bones, for example, sometimes I'll see the episode and I'll know who killed who was the murderer already because I recognize the episode. And at that point, I don't really want to watch it because I know what's going to happen, right? I know who the murderer is. I'll see them pop into a scene. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's the person that murdered the current skeleton on the table, kind of thing. Once you know what's going to happen, it's not fun to watch.
Agreed. That's what I mean. Even with Christmas movies, I think, and don't get me wrong, I do like some, there are some really good ones, but it's just for me. No, I'd say top 3 for movies for myself though. Probably The Departed. This is gonna sound so cliche, but The Departed, Godfather, and probably The Prestige. Prestige is Prestige is. I want to rewatch The Prestige. Actually, it's such a good movie.
I don't know if I'll expose myself here. I don't think I've watched any of those 3, so that might be a complete expose of myself. So, although to be fair, I don't watch movies. To be fair, I don't watch movies in general. So it's not I just watch movies and I skip those. At least my excuse is I just don't watch in general. So
okay,
that's my excuse.
One thing before we get into our topic today: favorite sports movie.
Oh, that's a tough one. Maybe I'm just classic. I'll just go with probably Mighty Ducks 2, the second one.
Okay.
Is it D2?
Okay.
I don't know. How about you?
So you were a D2 over D1. Interesting. I was too. I was a D2 over D1 guy. It's tough because like I love the Mighty Ducks. It's why I have a Timu Solani jersey in my closet. It's either Major League, the first one, or Any Given Sunday. Any Given Sunday, man, they're so good. It's so good.
What about the one for the Miracle on Ice? Was it called Miracle? I don't know. Was that a good one?
The thing is, I liked it. It was a good movie. It felt very Disney-ish though. Any Given Sunday, if you ever get a chance, anybody listening, watch the Al Pacino speech at the end of that movie. It's all time. To me, it's an all-time movie speech.
Okay, guess I got to check it out next.
And to transition to our topics, another thing you were watching was the World Juniors. Now, for people that don't know, preface here, Willie Dubs is an avid World Juniors guy. He follows the prospects, everything. I just tune in maybe for like the playoffs, or the knockout.
So the
portion.
the quarterfinals onwards, right? The quarterfinals onwards.
Yes,
you're that guy.
And
okay.
like I'll pay attention to what's going on. Just in general, what were a couple of your takeaways? I had some questions myself, but I was just wondering, what was your main takeaway from watching the World Juniors this year?
I think the first one is I think a lot of the other countries are starting to catch up, and it's quite evident when you watch them play because even some of the mediocre countries, at least in this tournament, for example, Kazakhstan, Germany to an extent, you can see that even though they still can get blown out every now and then, the games are just a lot more competitive. So that's, I guess, the first takeaway. I think maybe one reference I'll make is you probably didn't see the Slovakia-Kazakhstan game, but I think that's a game where you
definitely did not. No.
you probably expected Slovakia just to run away with that game, but I think I watched this game. I think I tuned in for the last 7 minutes of the game. It was 4-2 Slovakia. Then I watched Kazakhstan take a 5-minute major, and I'm like, well, this game's over. And then somehow, I don't know what the heck happened. They're being outshot, I think, was it like 39 to 17? Kazakhstan scores 2 shorthanded goals in the last 5 minutes of the game to send it to overtime. I don't know where this script came from. If you watch the first shorthanded goal, you might have some questions about the goaltending, so feel free to poke at that. But the second one was a nice move by the Kazakhstan forward. But, I mean, Slovakia won the game in overtime, but I think that's the beauty of the World Juniors. Just anything can happen. And when I speak of anything that can happen, the second topic I want to bring up is Canada's lackluster performance. For those who don't know, for the second straight year in a row, Canada goes out in the quarterfinals to a last-minute goal against the Czech Republic, or we'll call them Czechia for the sake of that's what they want to be called.
Can I say that's the most fascinating thing to me? Because when I grew up, again, 90s baby, right? So for me, in the peak 90s, like the World Junior Championship just felt like the Team Canada Invitational. Like it felt like they just won every year and dominated. Like it wasn't close. Like again, I don't know the numbers specifically because World Juniors aren't really my thing, but I just felt like they won or were in the final every year. I remember there was a year where I think Russia had Ovechkin and Malkin on the same team, and Canada
that was the 05 years. I think that 2005 team's is definitely in the debate for one of the greatest World Junior teams. Because I think that was the lockout year, right? So you had guys such as someone like Bergeron, who actually played in the NHL the year before, came back for the World Junior. I think he was a part of that team, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Someone fact check me on that. Crosby obviously on that team. Perry, that team was just stacked. And I think again another team we can talk about. I think probably the Finnish team from 2016. That's probably the second greatest team of all time. Again, another stacked team.
I think what's interesting is it went from that, and even those years they lost, like it was kind of felt fluky almost in a way when they did lose. Like I remember that the year where Jack Campbell came in to finish the game, and Canada was leading, but the U.S. came back. Or there was that year where I only remember
Saskatoon.
I only remember the Bobkov year where Bobkov came in again. Goalie comes in middle of the game, and Russia comes back and wins. But even those felt like okay, it was just a fluke occurrence because again, like it was a weird set of circumstances, right? Whereas now, like I look at the last couple of years, like honestly, and I get Canada didn't bring all their guys, and you can talk about that, but like the U.S. has felt equal to or on par as Canada. And then previous to that, like you mentioned that 2016 Finnish team, like Finland had a run with some really good teams too. And it doesn't feel like Canada felt like, to people that watch college football, is the best example. Canada felt like Alabama, basically, where every year they would just come in and be near the final or close to it. But you knew they were the best team. I don't feel that way anymore watching these games. And you look at I look at the U.S. like the roster of those guys, and it's a bunch of guys who are going to go in the first round, and a bunch of guys, which is this is interesting too, is like I don't want to call it the genes, but it's like you have Lane Hutson's brother playing like a mini Lane Hutson and stuff like that. Just it's really interesting to see personally. So
I think the rest of the world is catching up, and I think the U.S. Because they have the U.S. Like the national development team. I think a lot of those guys play together, so having that kind of chemistry helps, especially in such a short tournament too. And I think I could be wrong, but I think their entire first line plays together at Boston College, so it kind of helps when you all play together on a consistent basis. It also helps when when your center is supposed to go first overall in the next draft. That probably helps too. And the other two guys are first round picks. I think.
Can I
Ryan
say
Leonard,
when I watch James Higgins, man, I'm not just saying this because like he's American. Just reminds me so much of Jack Eichel. It's like it's scary.
he's an interesting guy because there's times in the game where you don't think you'll see him very much, but then you'll look at the score sheet and he'll have 2 assists. Even if he doesn't look like he's making an impact in the game, he still puts up the points, or he's still involved in the game in some way where you might not notice it, but it has an impact on the game, right?
But he reminds me of Eichel in that how like he's very structured. Like his defensive game is very structured for a young age, which is surprising. But overall, like I thought the U.S. looked really good. I thought Finland, again, the scrappy, always just somehow gets to the Final Four, and they. Again, I've always known the Finns for I remember the Nagano Olympics where it was 2-3, it was Solani, Lettinen, and I'm blanking on the older, and then some of the younger defensemen of like there was Timonen, Numanen, etc. But it was a bunch of like scrappy 2-way guys who just overachieved, and I think they won the bronze medal in Nagano that year if I remember correctly. They beat the US, yeah, and I look at this Finnish team. It just reminded me that, and it just somehow
it's the same team too, right? Because I think this Finnish team wasn't projected to go very far in this tournament. I think Helenius was probably their only. I might have been their only first round pick on that team, but I mean, also the other thing too was they gave the U.S. their only loss of the tournament, and they almost took the U.S. out in the finals too because they took the game to overtime. In fact, I think they had the lead at one point in the game. I could be mistaken.
They did, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the Finnish teams are always very scrappy. And they always find a way to get things done because. I don't know what it is about that team. I don't want to say they work harder than any other team, but it really does look like it. They don't give up.
Can I say, while I think Sweden's the biggest underachievers on the world stage, Finland has to be by far the biggest overachiever. Like year after year, with the amount of, again, they don't put out consistently the talent that the US and Canada and even Sweden does, right? But somehow they just find a way.
They're always around the medals. They're always around the medals. It doesn't matter what year it is. I think even in their down years, they at least get to the bronze medal game even in a down year.
And then obviously they're always such a pain to play, and you don't understand why.
When they have all the talent.
Yeah, it's so weird. I part of me thinks there has to be something structurally where they really do a good job of teaching defensive, which is why I was so surprised when Laine came into the draft. He wasn't he wasn't a good defender, because every Finnish player I can think of that's
is defensively responsible, right?
Yeah.
Even the ones that aren't that great, their defensive games sound enough given their age, right? I think Laine is the one exception where he was just pure goal scorer. I think the one knock was his defense. It almost made you wonder if he was Finnish at all to begin with, right? You would almost question.
You think about other guys like Barkov, obviously, Selke level defender. Lundell's pretty good. Aho's good. Hintz is good when he's healthy. Like even their defensemen too, right? Heiskanen is a defense first guy. It's just really interesting to me. I've always been impressed by Finland. Again, just the way they overachieve, and it's not one of those things where, and again, it's something that's been going on. It's not just a fluke. It's been going on for 30 years. Like that Nagano team, again, there was Solani, there was Lettinen, there was guys like that, but 2 of their goalies, I think, weren't even NHL caliber that year. Their defensemen were weird because Numanen was older, but some of the other guys like Kimmo Timonen and stuff were a lot younger. And to see that team,
they were still coming into their prime. Yeah.
Right. And when you see those rosters compared to the USA, compared to Canada, compared to Sweden, compared to Russia and stuff like that, like it was really impressive to see. And again, you look at them, I think you mentioned this year there was some stat about They haven't. What was the stat about draft eligible players or something like that the last couple of years? There's something about like just the first round picks they've produced just haven't been the same compared to the other countries.
Yeah, I
But
think
it's like,
I think there was a bit of decrease. I think it was pointed out on one of the broadcasts. I can't remember now. It's been a couple.
yeah,
It's been a little bit since it happened now, but they don't put out. I mean, they haven't put out. I would say I haven't put out a top 10 pick in a little bit too now because I
yeah.
think I don't remember who their last one is. I'm still blanking, but I think Hellenius was like mid first round pick,
Mm.
and he was one of their better first rounders. On the topic of Sweden, just randomly for you, I guess can you guess how many gold medals they've won in the last 40 years of this tournament?
One.
Yeah, so it's just the one,
Oh, is
and
it?
it's
Okay.
the
I just only remember the one.
and the only and I think that one was when I think people who remember Zibanejad scored the golden goal, but they almost lost that game to I think Russia despite outshooting them by like 50. I think it was like 51-16 or 51-19. I don't
Mm.
know. Sweden just finds a way to always blow it in this tournament. I don't know how. It's one of the givens. It's the same thing when people say, "Oh, the Leafs are always due for a first round exit." I think the same could be said that Sweden's always going to find a way to. They'll never lose a round robin game, but then they'll find a way to lose.
So Sweden is like the Leafs of the World Juniors. That's where we're getting.
They actually are. Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
I think they straight up are.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess the takeaways for overall, like, Finland overachieves as always, Sweden underachieves as always, and like I guess the rest of the field is kind of coming close to Canada, with the U.S. almost, I'd say, being close to, if not on par. Is that fair?
Yep. I think the other thing too, I think just one last thing to mention before we I guess segment into the next like part of our podcast is there was some controversy in regards to Canada's roster selection. So they did leave off quite a few number of big names. So they left off Michael Misa, who's supposed to be I think probably a top 5 pick in this year's draft, second leading scorer in the OHL. I believe they left off Andrew Cristall, who's leading scorer in the OHL. Zane Parekh, top 10 pick from this past year's draft, offensive defenseman. For a Canadian power play that struggled, I feel like they probably would have loved to have a offensive quarterback back there. I think they left off Yakemchuk, who I think was one of the few defensemen who scored 30 goals in any of the major junior leagues.
Okay.
So leaving that off is kind of interesting. Tej Aginla, although we later found out I think he had a hip surgery, so he probably wasn't going to be good enough to go. But I think I think Beckett Senenke, or what his name is, the third overall pick from past year's draft. So
Greatest
Canada
draft
left
reaction of all time. Greatest.
I know Canada left off a lot of talent. And I think what they did try to do was they tried to take a bunch of role players, but you kind of saw it in the tournament where they struggled to generate high quality chances. Like they generated a lot of I guess shots from the point, shots from the outside, but those chances never really I would say threatened many of the goalies, and they struggled to generate offense at all throughout this tournament. And that kind of goes back to the point of why would you leave your most offensively talented players off the roster, right?
I will say Canada does tend to overthink things sometimes. Like I remember, again, 98 Olympics. Everyone's going to think I just watched that one Olympic team, but it created a turning point because I remember they put guys like Shane Corson on the team. And Shane Corson, look, former Dallas Star, I think he's a good player, but I didn't ever think he was Team Canada level good, right? And if you remember, post Canada's Olympic struggles, they really made a change to just put the best players on and guys who had chemistry. I think that's what's going to happen probably. I think it's probably going to be one of those things where ideally there's some inward inflection and just get the best players and figure out the rest later.
I mean, I hope so. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see another repeat next year where they leave off X name, this guy. Let's be honest. Whenever you're building a roster, there's always going to be, oh, you left off this guy. But I think this year in particular, it was they left off so many names, and it was kind of funny too. I think Parekh and Yakemchuk after that loss to Latvia, I actually liked the post about the loss. A little bit of shade there probably because they're probably feeling like they deserve.
On the bright side, there is a bright side. Team Canada is not going to throw an end of the year awards banquet, and that's good because we all know what happens at some of those end of the year awards.
We know what happened last time they did that. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm pretty sure maybe there is a bright side.
The silver lining, the silver lining of all of it, right? So,
and just last thing before we go, was there any draft prospects that like you felt like either maybe didn't play well or just fortified who they were?
So maybe I'll talk about the one in next year's draft. So Gavin McKenna. Like I had 17-year-old supposed to be first overall in the the draft that's coming after this year's draft. So Hagen's
Mhm.
supposed to go first in this year. McKenna's supposed to go first next year. You see the talent with him. You see why he got exceptional player status and whatnot. But I don't know if it was the combination of being put with line mates that weren't super skilled that kind of bogged him down, or if everyone kind of knew he was Canada's most quote unquote talented player.
Mhm.
Didn't play super great. I think he only had, I could be wrong, maybe 1 or 2 points in this tournament. Probably would have expected
Right.
more out of him, especially since a lot of times Canada doesn't take players that are like not 19 or 18, right?
Mhm.
Because he's like one of the exceptions.
But overall, like everyone just kind of held pretty much.
I think everyone kind of held. I mean, Hagen's probably goes first. The other one I would have liked to see was Matthew Schaefer for Canada. He was supposed to quarterback the power play. Then he got hurt against Latvia. I think he
Mhm.
not his collarbone was it? I forget, some arm injury that basically took him out of the tournament. So Canada missed his presence on the back end after that. So don't really know if he would have fell or rose from his ranking, but he's definitely staying in the top 5.
I don't know, I'm just happy. Like as weird as it sounds, I am happy that it's become more overall. Like I'm happy the World Juniors have become more of a spectator thing. Because again, back in the '90s, don't get me wrong, I love that Team Canada was winning, but again, it just felt like the Team Canada Invitational, and it felt like every year was that Simpsons meme of stop, he's already dead, and that was Team Canada just punching on everyone. And I'm glad it's not that anymore because it was just at a certain point I just stopped watching because I'm like, there's no enjoyment in this. I'm glad. I'm glad.
I'm gonna try to stick that GIF in the edit if I can. We'll see what happens. It'll look funny as it appears on screen right as you say it.
Man. All right. So moving on here, we got a couple other things to cover. This is our awards episode because we are 45, 48. NHL has this weird schedule thing all the time where like
it's between
some teams
46
that played,
to 42 games. Yeah,
yeah,
46 to like 42 games, right? Or some weird number, 44.
I feel like right now is a good time to do the mid-season awards ballot. Dun 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 dun. And we're gonna just cover most of the major awards. We're not gonna do the Lady Bing because I never know who wins the Lady Bing at any year.
Yep,
and
I think
we're
also
not,
for the Art Ross and the Maurice Richard too, right? Because those are kind of statistical totals.
Yeah,
we can maybe talk about if we think anyone can come out of nowhere, but I think as far as even you guys can right now just go to Google, type in the search results and figure that out yourself.
Yeah, pretty.
You don't need us to tell you that, right?
So we're just going to cover our top 3. We might, in the context of the conversation, we'll talk maybe about some guys we thought could have made it. We did not discuss these beforehand, for the record. So this is going to be relatively new to both of us. We'll see what we have. I will say this year was kind of interesting because there felt like some awards felt really easy to do and some felt really difficult, which was kind of interesting because, and even it's weird, some felt very definitive at the top and then the rest felt messy and some felt really messy all around. So there's going to be a wide range of opinions on a lot of these. So I'm just going to tell you, like, again, if you disagree, that's perfectly fine.
I mean, I think that's the whole point, right? I don't think we want a podcast of just agreeing on every single pick, right? That'd be kind of, not going to say boring, but the viewers might fall asleep halfway through.
Yeah, I don't think people are a big fan of circle jerks, just generally.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on here. So first award, the Jack Adams for Coach of the Year. I sometimes hate this award because it feels like a lot of these guys just get fired after a year or two. So it's always kind of fascinating to me when we do this award.
They'll win, or like they'll get fired in the same offseason that they won it somehow, right? I don't
know.
Well,
Lindy Ruff, right? He won the award and literally got fired the year after. And it's that in GM of the year. I always find interesting because guys will get the award. And
didn't that happen with Ted Nolan? Didn't that also happen to Ted Nolan when he was the coach of the Sabres? Yeah, I remember that because I remember seeing, if anyone watched the TSN special on that, I think he admitted he threw he showed the trophy in the in that episode, or that I guess the quote unquote like 30-minute episode, and you literally can hear him shake the trophy and the sound of it kind of being loose because he admits he chucked it down the stairs after because he admitted it didn't really mean much if he didn't have a job anymore, right? So
I remember also even the GM of the Year award where Marc Bergevin won it that year and then just got fired, right? Like a year or two later. It's just interesting. It always feels like you end up picking the teams that, like, I feel like we don't reward consistent excellence enough, and we kind of always just pick the team that was supposed to underachieve, or team that was supposed to be terrible but overachieved. And I'll admit some of these are that, but I don't know. I just feel like it's weird to me that John Cooper hasn't won more, or like Jared Bednar hasn't won more, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Makes sense. I think a lot of the I don't know what it is. Is it? I don't want to
Or
say it's voter fatigue
or Paul
like voter
Maurice
fatigue.
too. Like what? Like Paul
Yeah.
Maurice. Honestly, Paul Maurice, like last year, I felt like should have probably won. You know,
I
like
mean,
it's just it's a
they also
weird.
won the cup. They also won the cup for crying
Yeah,
out loud. So
that's fair.
I guess he cares more about that. To be fair.
All right. I'll go to my number 3. I'll start with my third. I have Dina Vason. Do you have him anywhere? Or
I
no?
have on my list. He is number 3 for me. I'm wondering if we might have the same one. This one was one of the awards I thought maybe we might have the same ones. But...
No, I don't. Okay, so here's my argument. All the young guys are playing better. Like, I don't know. Again, maybe this is just he's better than the other guy, because I don't know what Pascal Vincent was doing, but oh my god, like you watch the guys play. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say with Pascal Vincent, I remember he kept playing Sean Corrali on the first line, and he kept saying, He kept saying, "I trust him." So I want to say anybody over him would have been an upgrade, but I'll give Evason the credit he deserves because he's definitely been an upgrade. It's not the by virtue of the other guy just being complete net zero
But you look at all the guys, like I thought Marchenko was good last year. I didn't think he was this good. Voronkov looks better. Chinnikov before he went down looked better. Sillinger and Ken Johnson all look better. Like, it's crazy what a difference it makes. And this is a team I thought would be, I remember we talked about this, I thought they would be one of the 3 worst teams in the league. And you look at them,
they're fighting for a wild card spot, and they're fighting for it. They're right there in the thick of it.
And they're doing it with a lack of quality. There's not maybe Jack Greaves might be something, but there's not a quality goaltender on this roster right now. And there's a real lack of defensive depth outside of Werenski and Severson. And
I was going to say Severson's been scratched too. He's making like 8 million. He's been scratched a couple times too, so I wouldn't even call him quality. Maybe I'd reference Provorov probably instead of Severson, but
sure. But like either way, it's really Werenski and a bunch of other guys. And what's crazy too is he's kind of changed his profile, because in Minnesota is very defensive, but here it's very offensive, which I like. I love adaptability. And I remember when Monahan came there, I thought it wouldn't do enough to really move their needle. But again, proven wrong. Like the Monahan, Voronkov, and Marchenko line's been one of the best in the NHL this year, right? And again, you look at their offense. Bingo card. Yeah, right? And I remember Monahan was near a point per game. Marchenko looks like one of the best players in the league. Like, it's crazy what has happened now that Evason's took over. And you look at their offense, like it's 7th in goals for, 13th in expected goals for. They're 11th on the power play, 7th in shots for. Who had that? They're basically a top 10 offense. Who had that prior to the year? Nobody.
Well, I was gonna joke too. I think we play fantasy, so us two play fantasy. And whenever we see someone starting against Columbus, I'm not gonna lie. We used to see that as like a free win, but nowadays I think you and I both hesitate to start our goalies against Columbus.
100%.
Unless it's one of those, like, for example, in your case, Hellebuck. If it's Hellebuck, you're starting him regardless, right? If it's me, I might still. Although Shesterkin's been struggling this year, I might.
No, there's definitely this, like, the people's eyebrow gets raised when they're facing Columbus. Now you're like, oh, I don't know if I want, because it might be a shootout. Like, that's how good.
Yeah.
That's how good their offense has looked this year. And I got to give Evason credit. Again, one, for taking this team that I thought would be the worst team in the league to near a playoff spot. 2, doing it with the lack of overall talent they have on the back end. And 3, adapting his style, again, from a very more defensive-oriented one in Columbus to a very offensively oriented one from a defensive-oriented one in Minnesota to an offensively-oriented one in Columbus.
Well, that's actually what I was curious about too with Evason, because I remember when we saw Minnesota, he transformed that team because they needed to play a bit more defensively to be a good team, and that's what they did. They got into the playoffs a few times. Then I would say the wheels kind of fell off the bus eventually, because I think between the cap deficit and everything that happened and the lack of, I guess, I want to almost say their defensive talent kind of draining, it kind of eventually the wheels kind of fell off the bus, right? But I think that's one of the traits about being a good coach is that you have to adapt, and I think it pisses me off when you see a coach just continue to run the same style out, knowing the bad outcome that's already occurred with it, right? Whereas props to Evason, he realized, hey, look, I have all these high end like drafted offensive talent. Let's try to make use of it instead of hey, maybe I'll throw Sean Crowley on the first line, kind of. you get the joke
Damon
there.
Severson, yeah, I try. Yeah. All right. Number 2, I have Rod Brindamore.
Okay, so I deviated here. I actually went with okay, so this is I am struggling to stick with this name a little bit now because the past few games have me questioning a little bit. But I had John Hines, just for the
Okay,
sake that I think
so
again.
he was my like 4th.
Okay,
So my argument with Brindamore is what? Okay, my thing with Hines, I know
is
the
it
wild
okay?
point.
So my question first is it the consistency with Brenda Moore? Just I think because you were
Yes,
talking
it's
about at the beginning. Yeah, there you go.
it's the Rod the Bod. I don't call it the system, but I almost think he's underrated as a coach because you think of all the losses they had this past offseason of talent, right? Like they lost Brady Shea, they lost Teuvo Teravainen, they lost a bunch of depth guys. Burns hasn't looked the same. Anderson has barely been there for parts of the year, and the system just keeps chugging along. No matter like who's there, no matter like Brent Burns used to be the power play one guy. Now he's a backseat to Gostisbehere. Kochekov's in now. Like it doesn't matter who comes in, the system just keeps moving. And you look at all the numbers with the Canes. Argue they're somehow equal to or better than a lot of their metrics, like compared from last year to this year, despite losing talent. And it's crazy to me. I don't know how he does it, and I have to give him credit because here they are again. We thought it'd be a down year. Here they are near the top, near the top of the metro. Like
I can't remember if we picked them as one of our teams that we thought would be worse, but I think they were definitely a candidate on that list of teams we thought would be worse this year, and somehow here we are. What a surprise! They're still I don't want to say they're still a contender, but they're still a really good team, and I think they're contending for the division, right?
like
So
they're fifth
same
in
script as
goals per
usual.
game and eighth in goals against per game. Again, despite Anderson being out, despite the guys they've lost, and some of the guys it feels like they're almost just plugging in a way.
Like
And
Gostisbehere too, right? They plugged in
yeah,
Gostisbehere to fix their power play. That worked pretty well. Um, Even
but
some of the
it's
other guys
just
like Roslovich too. Some of the other guys they
yeah,
brought in.
like it's just crazy to me because no matter who they put in, like the constants have basically been what Sebastian Aho was basically been the constant. That's really it, right? Him and Jordan Stahl, I guess. But
I guess Nate
Brendan,
Chess too. Nate
yeah,
Chess,
Nature's
Svechnikov.
too. But like, but even those guys had down years here and there, right? It's just, I mean, in terms of consistency, guys too. But Brendan Moore's, it works every year, and I almost think he's underrated because they get to the playoffs and they end up not making the finals, but every year they just keep doing this. And for me, this is my like again, this is my thing for the consistency. It's no matter who's there, Rod Brindamore will somehow get you to to be one of the top teams in your division. That's just what
Well,
it is.
I was actually just having a look at it too because I think I was looking at on ice shot attempt percentage, right? So Corsi, and I think the two best players on the list are Shane Gostisbehere at 69% and Jackson Blake, who I think is one of their rookies. So I don't know what Brindamore is doing, but apparently just plug a rookie in, it'll work. Sign Gostisbehere, like I guess sign a random free agent such as Gostisbehere, find a way to make it work. Apparently he just if you give him any player, he'll find a way to make them work somehow. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
like that was just my second one. I Hines was my fourth. What's your argument for Hines?
I think Heinz for me, it's a somewhat similar argument to Evason. I think we thought Minnesota was. I don't want to say we thought they were going to be a lottery team, but we definitely didn't have them
I
anywhere
will say
being
I didn't
anywhere this
expect
good.
Gustafson to be this good. That's
Yeah.
the one
So
thing that threw me
that was
off.
that was part of my argument as to why I was a little bit hesitant on Heinz because I wasn't sure was it a Gustafson thing or was it a Heinz thing, right? But I mean, Minnesota wasn't supposed to be this good. They weren't
For
supposed to
sure.
be contending for the division. He has them doing that. He's kind of kept the defensive like style of hockey. Like I think they're still top 10 in high danger chances against,
Yeah.
and I think that so that's been the one constant. I think they still have the cap deficit. I could be wrong. The Parise Suter contract still burying them, so he's making
Yeah,
use of whatever
they're
they
they're
have
still
there.
under the cap penalty for a year. Marco Rossi's looked really good this
Yeah,
year.
Rossi especially too. It's
Yeah,
Rossi and Boldy have looked really good. I know
Rossi
Boldy's.
Bolt. Yeah, like I will say that those four guys, Rossi, Boldy, Kaprizov, Eric Sinek, is just a really good core four. I think on forwards, and then you just kind of fill out the rest. I had Hines as like my fourth choice. He was kind of there, but I felt like again, just the difference to me felt like with Brenda Moore, he's not riding. And again, this is a small thing. like a very small thing. But when you're picking between guys, it's very minute details. It's just like he's not riding something like Gustafsson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I was gonna say with Hines too, the Wild have been in a weird state. They've had kind of injuries like all over the place. So they had Zuccarello who was out for a bit, and then when he came back, I think Kaprizov went out for a bit. And then I think Eriksson Ek was out for a couple of games too. I know because you had Rossi in fantasy, so I kind of remember that. And I think their defense as a whole, if you look at their back end, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of looks questionable after Faber, and even Faber hasn't.
It really lacks a power play QB. No, I agree. He's done the best. Like I said, I think you could go either way with these guys. There were a lot of good coaching candidates this year. Not even including, I had some other guys listed too. Not even including some other guys in the league. But I think Hines is a good choice too. I think he's done a really good job. Me personally, out of principle, just had to give it to the consistency of Rod Brind'Amour. But I think you could go either way. Yeah. All right, I feel like number one.
Can I say it? Can I say it? Because I don't know if people. I feel like people are just gonna think. I went with Spencer Carberry. I hope that's your number one.
Swagberry, yes.
Okay. Okay. Part of me feels salty because he was one of Leafs' assistant coaches before he went to Washington, so part of me feels a little salty that he's doing well there, but I mean, props to him. He took his chance there.
The metamorphosis of this team, like they went from the worst team in goal differential to make the playoffs last year to one of the best teams in the league in goal differential, which is that's a 1 year change without adding like a franchise level player is staggering.
So there is the argument that he's right. Like I don't want to say there's the argument he's riding Thompson in the same way that Hines is riding Gustafsson, because Thompson's had a really good year too. If you look at the difference between him and Lindgren, I want to say it's night and day. But I think what's impressing me about Carberry is that I don't know what maybe it's the motivational part of his, I guess, coaching, but he has guys like Ovechkin who never really was a defensive player. Like if you watch the Capitals games, Ovechkin's back checking, Dubois out there putting in effort. It looks like he kind of, I don't want to say he looks like he cares, but he actually looks like he cares for once. So it's like, I think the fact you can get those guys to buy into the system and play hard, that's already a plus there. Plus, he's helped with the development of the youngsters too, right? Connor McMichael's looked pretty good this year.
Protas.
Alexei Protas has looked good. And I think even someone such as Strome, right? Strome a few years ago was kind of just a random free agent signing. I think he's more than a point per game.
He's point per game.
He's been a legit, I don't want to say legit number one center, but he's done everything you could have possibly wanted out of him too.
Dude, I would have given him coach of the year just for making Pierre-Luc Dubois play a great two-way game. Can I say that? Like, just the change, just transforming PLD from a cast-off in LA to what he is this year. Like, I would have just given him coach of the year for that. But it's not just PLD. Like, everybody's elevated their game under him. Like you said, Strome is near point per game. Again, PLD looks like a great two-way player this year. Chychrun's upped his game massively. And you think about it, Chychrun's been on two teams prior to this. Even with John Carlson kind of having a little bit of a decline this year. And the goaltending, like, I thought Logan Thompson was good. I did not think
it was this good, man. And Washington,
and the rest of the roster isn't like on paper. I know you shouldn't say on paper, but this roster on paper isn't like
it doesn't wow you,
the
right?
division. Yeah, exactly. But here they are, and I have to give them credit. And like you kind of saw the pieces last year, because last year the roster was a real struggle, and somehow they got there. I think this year's like, with maybe more of the guys he wants. You see the system, and you see how it works, and you see the forecheck, you see the two-way play. You see the pressure, and it's and like he's good at putting guys in specific roles where he's not asking everybody to do the same thing. And I think again, Ovechkin being the best example, like because he's older, he's not Dale Huntering him to make him play a two-way game. He understands his limitations.
Well, it's funny too because Ovechkin's actually. I'm not going to say he's trying to play a two-way game, but you see the effort on the defensive end, and that's something. I don't want to say he never really showed that, but I mean, when you're someone as good as Ovechkin offensively, you typically don't expect that.
But
kind of effort.
It's not something he asks. It's not something he asks for in like every situation. It's like it's selective, which I like, and it shows he knows.
But he's getting out of him too. Yeah, exactly.
And you see how he knows where to fit guys, like Chychrun, I think is a good example where he didn't start, playing as much as he did, but slowly it came over time, right? And even Thompson Lindgren, where it was a 50-50 split, and then it started moving.
Well, Lindgren got hurt, so that's kind of more Lindgren got hurt thing. The other thing I want to point out too is I think when Ovechkin got hurt, the team kept afloat. Like they were, I think they were 10-5-1 when Ovechkin was hurt. So losing your best player, they still played really well. So I mean, props to Calgary,
Yeah.
and I mean their analytics aren't great, but they aren't bad, right? So 16th in expected goals for, they're middle of the league. They're doing. I don't want to say the bare minimum, but they're doing enough. And then 10th in expected goals against, right? So they're giving their goalies a chance. And they actually have the league best penalty kill too. So they're not. So even when they do take penalties, they're not screwing themselves with the bad penalty kill, right? So it feels like everything's kind of chugging along.
They're one of those teams on paper. They're not. Again, on paper, you wouldn't expect much, but they're definitely not a team I'd want to see. Like, I feel like they'd just be so frustrating to play against.
And to highlight this, they also have a top 10. So they have a top 10 penalty kill and a top 10 power play. Like they have both. So
yeah, no, again, just not a team I'd want. They remind me of like kind of a better version of those 90s Sharks teams where, they're just guys. They're just a team that would just muck you up over like a 7-round
yeah, they're
series.
pesky, and you don't want to hit them in the first round of the playoffs because it's just going to be a grind.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, so I think we were unanimous on Carberry.
Yeah, I think that was a unanimous one. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So moving on to the Selke. This one was tricky. There were a lot of good candidates. It was hard to actually narrow down to 3. For number 3 for the Selke, I have Anthony Cirelli.
So here's the funny story. I think I eventually, at one point I had Heischer in my top 3. Then I took him out, and as I was looking today, I was like, Cirelli looks pretty good, and I'll just throw him in. I actually threw him at 3, funny enough.
So I had Heischer somewhere, like not, he wasn't in my top 3, but again, he was one of those honorable mention guys. Main thing for Cirelli, he's the main part of a top 10 penalty kill. Any line he's on is just ridiculously good at goal mitigation. No matter who he plays with, it's just him. And he's over 50% from the faceoff circles. That's really good too. His penalty kills, again, he's outstanding on the penalty kill. There's actually this funny stat for a while where in 71 shorthanded minutes, him and Brandon Hagel were on the penalty kill. We're actually up 5-4. So they actually scored more goals on the penalty kill than they gave up, which is kind of impressive. But overall, the thing is, even when Point went down and Cirelli was on the main line, which again, a little less.
His production kind of kept up too, right? I think he has like 30-something points and 36 points in or 41 games.
They were still good at goal mitigation. So it's, again, no matter who he plays with, I just think he's had a really good year, and I couldn't keep him out of the top 3.
Well, I mean, the defensive analytics also kind of stick with his side too, right? Because I think he has a defensive net rating of 4.4, which I think ranks 5th league wide for all forwards. So top 5 defensive forward right there. And I think in terms of its deployment, I think John Cooper has him playing against 40% of his ice time is against elite competition. So that Cooper trusts him and is willing to throw him out there. I think his Corsi is 60.71% at 5-on-5. And keep in mind, he's playing 40% of that against elite competition. And even the other 60%, you can't naturally assume that 60% is just against, crappy fourth liners. It's probably somewhere between the fourth liners, the second liners. You're still getting good competition in that 60, the other like 60-something%, right? So regardless of who he's playing against, he's just his expected goals.
Call him the Italian stallion for a reason, man. He is it's like he runs on horsepower. You watch him skate too, man. It's crazy, so good. I'm like, every time I watch him, it's just, again, one of those like late Tampa picks that just pans out into this great two-way player.
I think I bring this up with you whenever we talk about him, but it always astounds me how some of these guys kind of bloom late, right? Because he was undrafted in the OHL, and then he was like a 3rd rounder in by the Lightning. I don't remember which year, because I remember watching him, I think at the World Juniors that one year. And like throughout the tournament, he just got better and better and better. And I thought, hey, he'd be a pretty good player for Tampa one day. I did not think he'd be this good.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 2, I have Alexander Barkov.
Oh, okay, so you know what? I know who you have number 1 then. I think we might have the same number 1. Okay, but anyways, it could be wrong.
You have Barkov at 2 too?
I have Barkov I was going to have Barkov at 1, but there was one other guy I was looking at. No spoilers yet. That'll have number 1. I want to say we rename the Selke Award.
Like, what's there to say here? He's like, I feel like every year I could just copy and paste what I'm gonna say for Barkov every year because he just does it. The only difference is this year he was out for a little bit, but like,
and I think that might be the only reason why he doesn't win it in the end. Those few games he missed might be the reason. But like 4.6 defensive net rating, he's 4th for all forwards.
61% from the faceoff circle. Like minute
40 on the PK. per game. I mean, he's out
Like,
there for pretty much every penalty kill. And I think Maurice has him against elite competition. I think 48.1% of his ice time. So,
no,
I mean,
it's
who wouldn't
ridiculous
trust
how
him?
good he is. He's just it's just and it sucks because, like, again, you know how Bergeron stopped Barkov? Barkov's, to me, stops guys like Anze Kopitar and other guys like that who would win more, but it's just, he's like the new standard now that Bergeron retired, right? It's
Also,
crazy.
when you watch Barkov play, I don't know if you've watched a lot of his games. You watch him and he doesn't look like he's doing very much, but then at the same time he's doing a lot defensively, right? He'll like sticks in the right lane, wins
He-
like he wins the faceoffs.
his defense isn't loud. It's very, I
Yeah,
don't
it's just
explain it.
I don't know how to explain it. It's just sound, just quiet but sound. I think is the best way to describe it,
Yeah,
and just
like
miles above
it,
everyone else.
it's not like a loud, like, there's some guys who used to play very loud defensive games. He's not that. It's just he knows where to be positional. He knows where to have a stick. It's really interesting. It's very, like, his positioning is just so good. It might be one of the best. He might have some for a forward. He might be one of the best in the NHL.
Again, here's the example of Finland producing good defensive forwards.
Right?
Exhibit
No,
A, the best example. Or would you say the best example, or would you say like
yeah, it's
I guess
him. Him and Yuri Lettinen. Because remember,
Well,
Yuri
yes, yes.
Lettinen
I was gonna say
Yuri
Yuri
Lettinen.
Lettinen.
Look, I'm a Stars fan, so I have my bias here. Yuri Lettinen won Selkies as a winger. You know how hard that is to do?
It's funny because I think when the Selke was first awarded, it used to be won mainly by wingers, and then I think was it Bob Gainey was the one who broke the trend, and then center.
Mm.
I think that's when centers started to win it consistently, and then Lettinen kind of bucked the trend for a bit. That's why when I said like, do you think Barkov's the best?
He's
like,
probably in
he's
terms
one of the
of
best.
if you combine
Yeah.
production plus defensive game, yes. But I'd like,
But I think
for me,
Lettinen,
I think
yeah, I was gonna
Lettinen
reference
has an
Lettinen.
argument for sure.
Yeah.
Number one.
So number
I
one,
don't-
let me say this.
All right,
Did you
who
have
you
Sam Ryan? Did you have Sam Reinhart?
Okay, so him and Barkov were really close. My argument was, to be that good defensively as a winger, I just had to, like, that was my tiebreaker, really.
Well, he leads the league in shorthanded goals, right? He has 5 shorthanded goals. He does all the right things defensively. And again, when I'm gonna reference defensive net rating again, he has a plus 6.3 defensive net rating, which leads all forwards in the NHL as a winger.
Mm.
And a winger hasn't won this award since Can you even remember the
was
last
it
time
Yuri
a winger was?
Lettinen? Was it?
I wonder if it's actually Yuri Lettinen.
It might be.
Honestly,
Yeah,
who
I have
knows?
him. I have him there. Okay. Yeah, like, to me, Reinhard, Barkov, you could go either way, I'd be fine. And again, there are other guys too. Like, I think Jordan Stahl had an argument for me, but just the minutes weren't enough. He doesn't play enough minutes. Again, Anze Kopitar's been really good this year. You mentioned Nico Hischier as well. Like, there are a bunch of guys.
Hischier's penalty killing was kind of lackluster. I think that's what kept him off this list for me. I was doing some research into it. He's just not. He wins a lot of faceoffs, and he leads the league in faceoff wins. He's just, unfortunately, in the penalty kill, he lacks a little bit there. So
There were a bunch of guys. It was hard to fit. I think these three were the three, and I think, again, you can alternate between Reinhard, Barkov. I had to give it up for the winger in this case.
well, also Reinhardt actually was 4th in Selke voting last year. So he was. I mean, he was a top 5 Selke candidate last year too. So, and I think this year he's upped his game even more. And Barkov missing those few games might actually just give him the edge, I think.
Paul Maurice, another guy too, where you think about, like, the Florida Panthers are a very defensive team, but if you remember that Winnipeg team, they were basically
Pure
a
offense.
Oh my god,
You had Hellebuck during those days, so you knew how many shots he faced. It's crazy.
It's so interesting. All right, moving on to the Calder here, Rookie of the Year. So my top 3, I feel like this is I don't say unanimous, but I don't feel like there's much deviation here. For 3, I have Dustin Wolf.
Interesting. Okay, so I had Wolf at number 4, and then I had Mitchkov as mine at number 3, and
So Mitchkov was my 4th, but, like, for me with Wolf, it's just, again, Big Wolf on Campus here. I don't know if anyone remembers that show in the 90s on YTV, but man, like, he's been really good. 11th in goal save above expected, 917 save percentage, 250 goals against, and the Flames aren't, like, don't get me wrong, they're about league average in everything defensively. So they're 13th in expected goals against. They're 17th and 15th in shots against and high danger chances against. So he's not getting shelled, but he's not getting insulated either, right? And it's a team where he doesn't have a lot of goal support on the team too. So he's asked to carry a pretty heavy burden for the Flames, and he's been doing that. And I think for a goalie to be doing what he's doing, I almost have to give it that third spot there. And he'd be higher. Just the other two guys have just been ridiculous.
So I had Michkov. He had 33 points in 45 games. He had that weird stretch where I think he only had like 2 points in 12 games. But I think when people actually looked at the numbers, he would have ranked 78th in expected goals per 60 and 29th in individual expected goals per 60. But I think it's actually funny because he actually experienced some bad luck. He was actually 202nd in goals per 60 and 171st in individual goals per 60. Right. So I think he had to hit a little bit of a rough patch, and I think that 33 and 45 isn't truly representative of what his numbers should be. Like he did hit a really some really bad luck. Although I will say it might have counteracted the really high shooting percentage he had at the beginning. So there's some questions there. I mean, again, as a rookie, he's playing on Philly's first power play unit. I feel like it's notoriously tough to like earn
to be consistent on Tortorella's power play is tough.
It's tough because you get moved off of it consistently. I think he's one of the few guys who stayed on that PP1 this whole.
His power play is like a shell game. You know, it's like here's one. It's under one cup. It's other, just you never know who it's gonna be. Again, for me, he could have been third. It's just for me with the cold stretch he had, and Wolf just being a rock for Calgary. I just had, but again, you could go either way. The
only argument against Michkov I might say is I know Tortorella has scratched him a few times. Although I would
that's just
Tortorella, right? But he was struggling in some of the games before that, so it could be justified that maybe you could put Wolf up there. Because I'll be honest, I don't think Calgary's had to scratch Wolf to be fair, so he has that for sure, right?
Yeah, because Darth Vader is definitely going to be a 1
Sounds like a better alternative. I'm just kidding.
All right, number 2, I had Lane Hudson.
I had Hudson at 2. I really wanted to put him 1 just because he leads all rookies in scoring, but the guy at number 1 is just doing everything really well. And I think
sorry.
And I think with Hudson, it's mainly the offensive game. His defensive game lacks a little bit, and I mean, as a defenseman, you would like his defensive game to be a little bit better. But I think his role is he's just a pure offensive defenseman. He skates pretty well. He leads rookies in scoring with 37 points in 46 games, and he actually plays a ton of minutes for Montreal. I don't know if that's a testament to Montreal's lack of defensemen, or if that's he's earned St. Louis' trust.
It's interesting to me because he leads all rookies in points as a defenseman. He's a really good passer and playmaker, and his zone entry and zone control are insane. There are possessions where he will pretty much just circle from the defensive end down to the corner, back up to the defensive end. He's constantly moving, which I love in a defenseman. There's not just there's so many defensemen where once they don't have the puck, they're just kind of parked at the point a lot of times, and he is not that, which I love.
Well, I think he's an offensive defenseman, right? That's got to be your main instinct. No. You got to be able to move around.
But it's not that. It's just he'll pass it off, and he'll kind of anticipate the play. And it's really advanced for a defensive rookie. Now, he does have some defensive issues and gaffes, but it's a rookie. I don't expect most rookies to be really good defensively, even as defensemen. Miro Heiskanen's one of the few, I think, that just came in. Obviously, Makar as well, who just came in and were that good defensively. But yeah, he's impressive.
He's also turned up his game too. He's turned his game up a notch too. I think up to last week, since December 1st, he's point per game, and I think that he's point per game. He's fourth among defensemen in scoring, but that's despite playing. I think he plays the 52nd. He played the 52nd most minutes amongst defensemen during that time period. So he's catching fire as we speak. I could see an argument for him getting to number 1 if he continues this. He probably will hit some cold patches because let's be honest, all rookies kind of hit a cold patch at some point during the year. So I don't know, but I think number 1, I want to say, probably is a deadlock for the rest of the year, so we'll see.
And thank goodness he's panned out because, man, Yuri Slavkovsky has just not been it. So at least they have some young player to look forward to.
Yeah.
All right, number 1,
Celebrini.
No doubt.
Okay.
If you're a Sharks fan, you celebrate the Celebrini, man. This might be the most complete rookie I've seen in recent memory. I'm talking about playmaking, defense, near 50% from the faceoff dot already. Everything about this guy, I don't explain it. It's the most well-rounded game I've seen in a really long time on a really bad team too, which is impressive.
Well, It's crazy too because if you watch his game, like he back checks a ton. Like he's a 200-foot player as a rookie, which I rarely see forwards play a full 200-foot game. If you see him in puck battles along the boards, he fights for those, and it seems like every single time you watch him in those battles, he somehow just comes up with the puck, and I don't know how to explain it because he's not the tallest guy, right? He's not the strongest guy either, but he somehow just gets the puck out of those battles. I don't know if you saw that Will Smith goal against I think was it Vegas? Was it Vegas? The one where he picked Stone off at, I don't know, was it Stoner? I don't remember who it was, or Dorofeyev. Somebody at center ice. He like dives to poke the puck ahead. He gets the puck back, wrists it, and then when his shot is saved, he passes it back to Smith. He just did everything on that play, and I think that play highlights just how good Celebrini is.
It's crazy because he's doing it with not a lot of talent around him. Like, yes, there's some offensive talent, and he's made them good to watch. But you watch like there's a real lack of defensive playmaking on San Jose, and like you think about how much better maybe a situation might be if he had that, for example, and like what he's doing, again, playing a 200-foot game, the playmaking. Like the pressure he puts on your offense when he comes in the zone sometimes, like it to me, he was, as I know Hudson's been leading all rookies in points, but like the overall
also Celebrini missed a couple games though, so there's an argument Celebrini could be leading if he didn't miss those games too, right?
But the overall game, I just
yeah,
like the overall game just had to have him at number one.
I think this is one of the few times I've seen a first. I guess like I feel like a lot of times with the first overall picks, like when they do make it to the NHL, they don't usually. I don't want to say they play this well right away because I think Matthews, McDavid are the exceptions, obviously. But a lot of times either they don't make the NHL right away. Example: Owen Power, just one example I can throw out there. If they do make it, they struggle.
Miro Heiskanen.
Or they struggle a bit too, right? So I mean, he doesn't look like he's struggling out there one bit. Apparently, if you're just Macklin Celebrini, you're just that good.
Man, can I say this? I do think Bedard will be really good in the long term, but he's what I thought Connor Bedard would be as a rookie. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's even
like
better.
The hype.
Yeah, he's even better too because he has the defensive game because Bedard never had the defensive game, and I think whereas Celebrini was, you knew he was defensively responsible, but you didn't think it would translate this well to the NHL because a lot of these forwards I don't want to say get exposed when he gets to the NHL, but the game's faster. Everything's just. The players are faster and better, right? And you think that maybe his defensive game wouldn't show it as much, but somehow he's scoring, he defends well, good. He battles hard, he does everything right. I can't pick anything in his game that's bad. Can you like think of something that's bad in his game?
No, honestly, no. It's why I was so surprised when people were like, Bedard was the hyped up, and again, I don't want to compare the two, but it's like Bedard was the then supposed to be the next best thing, and he still might be, right? But it's like. When I watch Celebrini, I'm like, how is this guy not the next best thing? Like, he's actually crazy.
He's so good. Also, for reference for the fans, we've both considered trading for him in fantasy. It's not going to happen with the guy in our league. He ain't trading him, so sucks for us.
No, it's crazy. I don't even know what you'd offer. He's just so good. All right, moving on to the Vezina here, because I'm sure people don't want to hear me just talk about Macklin Celebrini for the next bit of time. The Vezina here, this one was interesting because I felt like number one was... If you don't vote this guy number one, you're just wrong. But I feel like 2 to 7 could have been anybody, really. 3, I feel like we don't have the same. I have Mackenzie Blackwood.
Oh, I do have Blackwood, actually.
Oh, okay. Then
so I had Gustafsson originally as number 3, and I think today I had a look. I think the Wilds have been on a bit of a decline as of late, so I took Gustafsson off, and I was looking down my list. There was a few guys I wanted to put there, but all the numbers just kind of didn't make sense. And I looked at Blackwood, and I kind of gave Blackwood the benefit of the
goalies. Doubt. Can I say this? It's hard to do this award fundamentally because goalies now play the volume is so different between goalies start to like. There's some goalies that have like 7 to 8 more starts than other goalies. And it's hard to evaluate because maybe some numbers might be better, but again, they're doing it on less volume, right? And volume matters because there's a higher chance the more you play, the worse your stats end up being over a larger sample size, right? So I had Blackwood here. He's been good regardless of the team, but he's been insane
lights out
in
for Colorado, right? He's been lights out.
Because I could easily see him finishing second at the end of this because he'll have more games with Colorado. With Colorado so far, he's 8-1 with a .928 save percentage and a .197 goals against. He's near the top 10 in starts. He's 5th in goals saved above expected, and that's despite playing all those games with the defensive sieve that is San Jose. I have him here, and again, I could easily see him finishing second by the end of the year.
Well, I think he's seventh now in goal save above expected. I think he fell a little bit over the past few games, but even then, like he's like still top 10 in save percentage. He's still top 5 in saves because I think in San Jose he got peppered, and even in Colorado they're not actually that great defensively. Like I think they're 20th in expected goals against.
But it's just not San Jose.
It's not San Jose. So it's the thing is it's an upgrade over San Jose, but it's not as if we put him on the best possible defensive team, right? And on a slightly better defensive team, he's been absolutely lights out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, to me, you could go him or Gustafsson here. Also, honestly, Shesterkin for me had an argument, but it's just the rate numbers aren't good enough.
Yeah, it's funny because the goals against average is a little bit high for Shesterkin, right? He's like a 910,
and the save percentage is a bit low. But the underlying metrics for him have been insane. It shows you how much he's just carrying the team.
Despite the Rangers being total crap. Yeah. I was going to put Shesterkin in as number 5, but just the Rangers. I feel like the Rangers have let him down for sure.
For sure. Number 2, I have Logan Thompson. Look, the issue with him is volume.
The lack of starts, right?
Like, he has 7 less starts than Blackwood. He has... I think almost 11 less starts than the guy we have in number 1. But otherwise, he's been insane. He's so like it's kind of weird.
He's second or third in pretty much every like statistic, right? So goal save above expected, he's second with 23.8. I think that's only if I had to look at this, I think that's only I think 3 behind the guy in number 1. And that's in like 11 less starts, which is kind of impressive, not gonna lie. Second in goals against average, 209. He's third in save percentage, 925. And Washington, like they are supposed to be a good defensive team. Like they're not a terrible defensive team by any stretch, but they're supposed to be 10th in expected goals against, but they're actually 3rd for actual goals against. So I think that kind of speaks to Thompson's performance as a whole. I think the only argument, like you mentioned, is he just doesn't start enough because this is the one knock I have against Spencer Carberry. I think it's like why would you rotate between Thompson and Lindgren? Like they alternate between Thompson and Lindgren on a daily basis. That's his one knock against him. And yet I think Lindgren's goal save above expected is I think it's in the negatives if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like
part of my assumption is like Thompson's never had a sizable workload, so I assume it's just bringing him along slowly, which I'm fine with. But
I think the only good thing about that is maybe he'll be fresh for the playoffs. I think you don't burn him out before the playoffs, so maybe he's playing 4D chess and I'm just playing regular chess. Who knows? but
yeah, Thompson's the interesting one because I think the volume when you do this at the end of the year, like 11 less starts than some guys, it's going to be like, again, it's going to be tough to evaluate. But right now, I have him here at second because just the numbers have just been like they pop out the page when you look at it. All right, number 1. Look, if you don't have if you have somebody else other than this guy, you're wrong. I'm just going to say this: you're wrong. Okay,
it's your fantasy boy.
It's Connor Hellebuck. That's it. Okay, look, let me. This is my only argument. He's leads the league in starts, goal save above expected, wins above replacement, goals against average among starters, not guys who came in for 2 starts and did whatever, shutouts and wins. There's him, and then there's everybody else.
Well, I was going to make the argument easier. I was just going to say he leads all goalies in every statistical category, like pretty much. Whether it's advanced or just the numerical ones, right?
It's him and there's everybody else. That's it. That's the argument.
Well, also, I want to highlight too: the Jets are 17th in expected goals against. Guess what they are in actual goals against?
Top 5.
3rd.
Okay.
So there's a sizable difference. It's an even more sizable difference than the one for Thompson, right? So
no, dude, he's so good. It's like I'm speechless when. Like you watch him play too. It's just he's so good, man. It's how I feel about it. There's just and this year, like he's been consistent, but this year he just separated himself. Even like, normally he's in that like 3 to 5 range every year, which you can bank on. But this year he's just elevated himself to a next level.
Well, and he's always been capable of being like a. He's always. I always find he's either the number 1 goalie or he's somewhere between 1 to 5, right?
Yeah,
every single year,
and
he's never fallen anything lower than 5, to be honest.
And the thing is, he does it on volume. Like I said, he leads the league in shots against. I believe he leads the league in starts. Like it's just when you're doing what he's doing on volume, there's nobody else. There really isn't. And he's always one of those guys where he's always, can I say, like, being the backup goalie for the Winnipeg Jets is like the cushiest gig, because Hellebuck will start, like, compared to other goalies, Hellebuck just takes most of the starts, but it's just insane what he's doing on this level of volume. Like, I haven't seen anything like this, I want to say, since Lundqvist's, like, peak season.
Well, I was gonna say the last what? Let's look at his last 5 years, right? Or like I'd say his last 6. We'll do last 6 just for the sake of this argument. The last 6 years, he's won 2 Vezinas. He's finished, I think, third in voting one of the other years. Finished fourth in voting one of the other years, and I think the 1 year he wasn't in the Vezina voting was he had a bit of a down year, and then this year, obviously, I'm including that within the 6. He's probably gonna win it. He will be. If he doesn't win it, then somebody definitely paid off the voters. I think that's the
that's some Russian judging voting. But Vasilevsky's not going to be involved.
Wait, are you referencing the figure skating at the Olympics? Oh,
yeah, Jamie Saleh, okay. David Pelch. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
But no, it's one of those things where I get more impressed by this guy every year, and it's funny because I know, like, for goalie of, like, at least this era, you could have argued, I think, Lundqvist, Vasilevsky, etc. But, like, I would have said Vasilevsky maybe, but, like, with Vasilevsky's relative decline in the way Hellebuck's playing, like, I don't know, man. It's just the year-to-year consistency of this guy is just it's ridiculous in an era where goalies aren't consistent year-to-year.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I think one prime example is Shesterkin, right? 2 years ago he was Hart candidate. This year, not even. I would say not even in the top 5, possibly not even in the top 5 of the Vezina ballots potentially.
Yeah, maybe by the end of the year. It's crazy. Like, and again, he's right now on pace to win the goaltending triple crown, which is absurd. Like, for a guy who has,
I guess question for myself and maybe for some of the viewers, who was the last goalie to win the triple crown? I guess.
I can't even remember.
Okay, so I think that highlights the point even further. We don't even know who the last person to do it
off
was.
The top of my head, no, because I don't even think Price. Maybe Price the year he won MVP, but if he didn't do it, then I really.
Okay, but that was like just a highlight. That was about 10 years ago, guys. If you're thinking that far, so.
All right, is there no doubt? There's no doubt, right?
Okay, there's no. I feel like you'd have to shoot me if I didn't pick Hellebuck for that one.
No, I'd have to find a different host because I'd be like, what? I don't know what you're looking at. Like, are you doing dark web analysis? Like, I don't know, man. It's Hellebuck. That's it. Simple.
We're not talking about dark web.
The Norris. This one was interesting. I think there are 3 clear candidates. But can I say this about the Norris? We need to add, like, a second award for, because I don't know how you evaluate a like, we need to add a second award for a defensive defenseman or something, because this is so hard to evaluate because there are guys in this position that just play 2 completely different roles. There's guys like Gustav Forsling is a complete eraser on defense, right? He is so good defensively. I don't know how you compare that to a guy like Cale Makar. I don't know how you compare a guy like Heiskanen, who is a little bit better, obviously a better offensive player than Forsling, but is also an insane defensive player. But how do you compare that against a guy like...
I think you need to create an award for defensive defenseman. I think there needs to be an award for that. And I think one article I was reading was, like, what do you do with guys like, for example, Jonas Siegenthaler, right? Leads the NHL in defensive net rating at plus 9.2. Like, what do you do with a really good defensive defenseman like him? Or even someone such as Gavrikov or Mikey Anderson, who are both, plus 9.1 defensive net rating. Or even like a Jacob Slavin. Yeah. What do you do with those guys that just don't put up that many points? Because I don't want to say the Norris trophies become whichever defenseman scores the most points, but it really feels like that. And I didn't mind it so much when there was the odd case of like a defenseman who scored or like who scored way more points than somebody else, right? Or even like I think the year. What about the year that I don't know if the year that PK Subban won it was weird, but
the first year Erik Karlsson won, that was a big thing but again, we started looking at, I think that's also the time possession statistics started to become more of a thing. But it's just hard now because it wasn't just one guy like 20 points ahead. It's like all these guys that are really close. And again, I don't know how you compare these guys to again, a guy like Forsling, a guy like Slavin, guys like Heiskanen, guys where you watch Heiskanen play. And again, it's similar to Barkov, where it's not something that's loud, but the positioning and defensive play in situations is so good. And I know people are going to say I'm biased because I'm a Stars fan, but you watch the positioning on certain plays, he makes it look so easy. It's like, how do you compare that to just again, how do you compare that to a guy like Werenski, McCarr?
I was going to like a dynamic offensive defense. You can't compare a dynamic offensive defenseman with a defensive defenseman. There's just no. I don't want to say there's no good comparison. Like, I know people tried defensive point shares, but that again is flawed because it depends on your ice time, and certain people have more power play ice time than penalty kill ice time, and it's more advantageous to be on the power play than on the penalty kill, obviously. So there's just no good way to compare them.
Because it was weird. I had Morrissey, like he could have, like I had Morrissey in that because he's been better defensively than most of the guys I've had in the top three, but I just couldn't justify it. But it's like again, I just didn't know what to do.
It's become a point race, so maybe I'll go with my number 3. So I'll start with my number 3. I had Zach Werenski as number 3.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
he leads time on ice.
No, I think he's he leads on time on ice, but I was gonna say he's second amongst defensemen in points. So 51 points. And he's, I think, 7th for takeaways with 27 amongst all players. So not too,
I'll say this.
All defensemen.
I'm okay with his lack of defense considering how much of a workload he has to carry with the rest of Columbus. He's one I'm more okay with.
Well, also his team isn't really good defensively as a whole, so it's not like he's the one guy that's dragging them down. I think the whole team. I think you could pick 7 or 8 guys worse than him on that team. Honestly,
he carries that roster. His zone entries, his setup, his time of possession, his everything. Just he's the engine for this team. I had to have him here again. I had him here over Morrissey just because of the load he has to carry. On this team, which that's the only real argument because I think Morrissey's had a better defensive year, but Werenski's just been everything. He's been the entire engine for Columbus, basically.
I find it funny because I feel like he's the perfect example of what Dean Evason has brought to Columbus this year because they've been more offensive, more upbeat kind of team. He's also not that good defensively, which kind of sums up Columbus in a nutshell. I think he perfectly encapsulates the Dean Evason Columbus Blue Jackets. So
yeah. Number 2, Cale Makar.
Cale Makar, yeah. Okay, I was waiting to say that at the same time because I think we might have the same guys again.
He's gonna be like Lidstrom level all the time because if you think
he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, right? So I mean, first in takeaways like this year, like he's not that bad defensively as people like to think because everyone likes to think offensive defensemen are really bad defensively.
He's not. No, he's actually solid defense. Like he's not gonna be a Forsling or Heiskanen or Slave. He's not supposed to.
Well, I think it's because of his skating, right? Because he's so good with skating that even if he seems like he's out of the play, he'll find a way to get back into the play somehow. I don't know how to explain it. It's just
he's also interesting because like the minute he has the puck, no one ever really pressures him. Like his gravity on the ice is something to behold. And like I said, he's on a trajectory where like if you're gonna talk about all-time guys, ever since he's been a rookie, he's gonna be first or second, or like I don't think he's finished lower than 3rd yet in Norris voting off the top of my head. And if you think about it, like the way he's positioned, that's an all-time trajectory.
Well, I was gonna say I think this year he leads defensemen in the following categories. I think it's goals. I think it's goals, points, even strength points, power play goals, power play points, primary assists. So I want to say like almost all the important offensive categories, he just leads all defensemen. So he's up there for that. I think the only knock I had on him was I don't want to say Nathan McKinnon's a big reason for success, but there are some statistics to back up that he hasn't been as great when McKinnon hasn't been on the ice with him. So Makar with McKinnon on the ice, his expected goals share, the Corsi, is about 62%, whereas when it's Makar without McKinnon, it's at around 41%. Now, obviously McKinnon's an elite player, but it is something to think about, I think.
My argument to that only is there's a real secret with Colorado that people don't realize, and they might during the playoffs, is their other lines outside of that first line are not very good right now. Like Casey Middlestat has been so inconsistent for them, and it's
funny because I think he started the year red hot, didn't he? He was just scoring at a constant pace, and then obviously that died out. Plus, I think the injuries they've had too haven't helped too because they've had I think Drouin got hurt. Then Nichushkin, I think I don't remember if he got hurt or he was on the suspension before he came back. Then he got hurt. Sorry, then he got hurt after he came back. Then Lehkonen got hurt, and then I think and then Lehkonen also got hurt. I think the whole team. They also had injuries. So I think Manson was hurt at one point too. man, they've just been.
Nichushkin's the one guy where if he gets, and I say this lovingly, like if I see he's out for something, I have to immediately go check what it is. You know what I mean? Like what it could be. No, but yeah, I have Makar here too. He's really good. He's going to be in the top 3 of this by the end. Just pencil it in. Number 1, I have Quinn Hughes. He is dragging. So. He is dragging Vancouver right now, like into the playoffs. One that we were kicking and screaming.
Well, he's the one we were curious to see because we thought we weren't sure which Quinn Hughes we would see this year, right? We weren't sure we would see the one that won the Norris last year, or if we'd see the previous Quinn Hughes who was still a really good player, but just didn't shoot the puck very much, a high assist kind of guy. Whereas this year, again, he's just been straight up elite. He has the highest points per game of all defensemen. I think it's at 1.22. I think he has the highest net rating of all all defensemen. And funny enough, that net rating, like despite being the highest of all defensemen, it would actually be 4th amongst all players, including forwards. So again,
well, I mean, he's insane. I think he has the 4th most average time on ice in the league, 3rd most average time on ice amongst defensemen. He leads the league in total possession time, and like even above Makar, which is crazy for a guy that's missed games, right? He's been insane this year, and again, he's taking this team who have all missed time, like Miller, Pedersen, for all different reasons. And he's
between missing time and struggling. Yes, there's both.
Like he's taking this team kicking and screaming to a playoff spot right now.
Well, I was gonna say just to highlight that point especially. Their Corsi when he's on the ice is around 57.57%. When he's off the ice, it drops to about 44%.
No, it's insane. I feel like, again, some people can make the argument for... I feel like you could have these guys in any order and it's fine, but I think these are the 3.
I wouldn't say any order because I feel like... I don't want to say Hughes has been... He's not head and shoulders above Makar, but I think he's been slightly above Makar. And I also feel Werenski, despite Werenski having almost the same number of points as Makar, he just isn't as good defensively as Makar. So I feel like that might be the splitting difference between those two. So
but, I mean, these are the 3 you're going to have.
I think it's the 3 guys you'll definitely have. I think there's less arguments for where you place them, but they're probably your top 3.
All right. Moving on to the heart. That's the big one. This is interesting because there's so many candidates, and I'm curious to see what anyone had. My number 3 is Connor Hellebuck.
Okay, so I had him at number 2. I had him a bit higher. I think he was quite integral to Winnipeg's success, and I think, again, it's rare you see a goalie that's so dominant. And usually when goalies are this dominant, they're usually within the top 3 of your... They usually get top 3 in the Hart voting, right? Shesterkin that one year. Price won it the year. I think he basically won the Hart too, and he won the Vezina, right? So he's somewhere in the top 3. But
Jamie Benn was robbed. Okay, no, I'm just joking. All right. Here's my thing: goal save above expected versus Eric Comrie is staggering.
I wonder. I was gonna say, if you really thought Eric Comrie would have a good year, I don't know what drugs.
It's not that he would have a good year, but like I thought. Again, it's not. My point is, it's Eric Comrie's goal save above expected is minus 3.3. Connor Hellebuck's is 26.1, and that's on volume. Again, the Jets again. They're a solid scoring team. They're not a great defensive team.
They're a bottom half defensive team. Yeah, bottom half defensive team.
A lot of their goals against metrics or penalty kill, a lot of it can be subscribed to Connor Hellebuck. There was a stat where he basically broke. So NHL Edge has this thing where they have everything sorted by percentile, and Connor Hellebuck was so good he basically broke the metric screen. Like, everything's in the 97th to 99th percentile.
I feel like anytime you break a metric, like, you're just an elite player. That's just how stats works. Anytime you just break it, that's automatically determining factor.
He's been so good this year. And again, it's hard for a goalie to get into the list, but he was just so far and away better than every other goalie, again, on volume. And he's been such an integral part to the Jets, who have just pretty much been in first place and never looked back, essentially. And you thought they've
wilted a little bit as of late. They're not because I remember they started the year completely red hot, just blazing. I think now I don't want to say they're not being exposed, but you're definitely seeing that it is possible to beat them. It's just Good luck with that.
So,
I'd say
like,
good
let me
luck
break
with
this
that.
down. No, but I mean, it's still like you look at them. They're by what they have 65 points, which is I guess Washington's ahead, but they've held the spot again in a really competitive division. Like outside of Nashville and Chicago, like Utah's a decent team. St. Louis has been pretty good since Montgomery took over, and then you have Colorado, to whole of Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota. Like and their goal differential too. A big part of that is Hellebuck. And to point up that thing about him breaking the metrics, so Jesse Granger posted this where again NHL Edge does stat visualizations, and NHL Fantasy or NHL Edge posted this too. So just to put this up here, I'm just gonna pull this up. So his goals against is in the 99th percentile amongst goalies. Overall save percentage, 99th percentile. High danger save percentage, 93rd percentile. Mid-range save percentage, 93rd percentile. Goals for average, 97th percentile. Points percentage, 97th percentile. Percentage of games above a 900 save percentage, 99th percentile. What else is there? What else is there?
I don't think there's much else to say about him. I think it's also funny too because we've also brought in more. Like I remember when we talked about him for the Vezina, we talked about some of the other stuff like the goal save above expected. I think even now that we can still find more statistics to talk about him, just kind of proves just how I want to say head and shoulders above the rest of the goalies, and then even to the point where might even be better than some of these forwards, right?
For sure.
So maybe I'll talk about my number 3. So for number 3. I was split between Draisaitl and Kaprizov. Kaprizov's been hurt and he fell off as of late, so I had to take Kaprizov off my list. So I went with Draisaitl number 3. I know there's going to be some debate because everyone mentions, who's really leading the team. Is it Draisaitl or McDavid? I'm going to give the edge to Draisaitl this year not just because of the scoring, because he is the one, he is the leading.
I'm going to disagree. I wouldn't have him I don't have Draisaitl at 3.
I mean, he's leading for the Rocket. He's leading for the Rocket Richard. That's number 1. He's also, I want to say he's number 2 in points in the league. I could be wrong. Someone fact check me on that. He's winning 56% of his faceoffs.
I have him at 1.
Oh, you have him at 1. Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you had him off the list. I thought you had him off the list from the way you were talking about him.
What was the argument for having Draisaitl and Draisaitl versus Kaprizov is not an argument. Okay, this is the argument for Draisaitl. I'm just gonna make this very simple. He leads the league in goals created, even strength goals, and game-winning goals. He's been a borderline Selke candidate this year with how he's been really good defensively. And like you look at everything, it's what he does in the power play. It's the 200-foot game. It's the elite face-off win percentage, and he did it for a while with Podkolzin and Arvidsson as his teammates. People can say that, oh yes, he has McDavid, but he's been the one this year. He's been the one. And like, to me, he was by far number 1 candidate for the Hart this year. So the fact
So I had him at 3, and I thought so. My thing was Hellebuck's had such an extraordinary year for goalie, and I think I usually my whole thing with goalies is if they're having an extraordinary year, like I don't want to say I'll just put him above the forward, but I think like this is the one year where you can make an argument if a goalie's having such a year, you can put him above somebody such as a Draisaitl.
If Draisaitl was having one of those years where he was a little bit more aloof defensively, I would agree. It's just he's been so good defensively this year, and what he's doing on offense, I had to have him at 1 because there's no argument against what he's doing. And yes, people can say, oh, sometimes he plays with McDavid and they do like a hero line thing. Sure. But again, he was doing it without him anyway. Doesn't matter. I have him at 1. Who's your 1 then?
I had McKinnon at 1. So
okay. I don't have McKinnon on the list.
Okay. That's I am kind of curious. Wait, so you had Hellebuck at 3. You had Draisaitl at 1. Okay. So your number 2 is the one that I'm not sure about. Okay. So I had McKinnon at 1. I just think given what Colorado's been this year, I think it's been him and Makar who have been, I want to say, the bright spots. Because let's be honest, before Blackwood
you're
got
clearly forgetting someone.
Okay, I know who you're talking about. Before you jump off, I know Rantanen's there, but I think McKinnon leads the league. And if I'm wrong, everyone quote me on that. He leads the league in scoring. And he leads. It's funny because he leads it by a good margin compared to Rantanen. Like I think
But
they're line mates.
Rantan's still
And
a
he's
top
ahead.
10 scorer in the league. Let's not act like he's cannon fodder.
Yeah, but
Like,
he's top 10, but he's 11 points more than Rantanen. They
No,
play
no,
on the
but-
same line. They also played the same number of games. And I want to say, like, again, when I pointed out Makar, I think part of Makar's game as time on ice, I feel like has been elevated when McKinnon's been out there, right? Because McKinnon, again, the Corsi is around like 50-something%, whereas with when Makar by himself, it was like around 40%, right? I feel like Colorado without McKinnon, just, I don't want to say they wouldn't be where they are, but given their bad start with the goaltending, given the injuries they had, I think without McKinnon, I don't want to say they're just dead, but I want to say they're just dead to the rights.
I had McKinnon fourth just because he was such a tough eval because again it's been a heavy assist year for him, which I know, yeah, how much do you hold against him really? Fair enough, right? I'm not gonna, but it's like, again, I look at some of the guys like Draisaitl behind him has 5 points behind but 15 more goals, right? Like, also again, it was hard to separate not separate Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, but it's like there was it felt like, I don't say a package deal almost in a way, but that was what was really hard for me. Whereas with the Hart, it's hard to, how do you, like, some of these guys I feel like are just clearly doing, again, Hellebuck, clearly what he's doing in Winnipeg. The guy I have at 2, which I'll mention in a second, clearly what he's doing. Draisaitl just clearly being the best goal scorer, like the best goal creator, goal scorer in the league with
I
the
think
200-foot game.
So the one argument I think for McKinnon versus Draisaitl would be, I feel like I don't know, maybe this is a weird, I hate using this argument sometimes, but I feel like if you took each of them off their teams, I think there would be a worse impact to Colorado than Edmonton, right? Don't get me wrong, Edmonton would suffer defensively, but I want to say the McDavid versus Rantanen thing, like you say McDavid by far is the better player, like I think, and given what Colorado's been through this year as a whole, like with the injuries and even Edmonton, their goaltending just being, I just think that when you McKinnon, without McKinnon, this team would just be dead to the rights. Whereas I don't think it's the same thing with Edmonton.
Again, it's hard for me to do that in a vacuum because my counter argument could be like, what if you put McKinnon with Podkolzin and Arvidsson and gave, like Draisaitl, Rantanen, and I think it's Colton.
I think the problem with that is you'll just never know with that, right?
Like, no, right, but that's what I mean. It's the same argument either way. And McDavid's been missed some time, and Draisaitl still kept the Oilers humming along. And again, it's just,
he missed 5 games. Like,
still, that is something.
I mean, it's a decent amount of time, but it's like you make it. I don't want to say you make it as if it's like 10 games. Like, you know what I mean? If it's like 10 or
but
11.
but my thing is with Draisaitl, it was just it's the production of goals at every level, plus the Selke, plus how good he's been as a Selke candidate. Like, that combination just does it for me. My number 2 is Quinn Hughes. Again, like I said, he is dragging this team into the playoffs. The only thing that hurts him a little bit for me with Hughes was the lack of games. Again, 4th most average time on ice in the league total, 3rd most average time on ice amongst defensemen. This is a crazy stat. For a defenseman, he's 19 points ahead of the 2nd place guy on his team.
I'm going to guess it's either probably JT Miller or it's probably JT Miller, right? Am I wrong?
Well, it's Miller and Garland, but Miller's done it in less games. Yeah.
Okay. So Miller, I guess.
19 points ahead of the 2nd place guy on his team. He leads the Canucks in points, shots, chance creation, leads the entire league in total possession time. So what you're getting from Quinn Hughes is an entire offensive engine. And again, on a team where he's like the only constant, Miller's missed time, Demko's missed time, Artur Silov's been one of the worst backup goalies in the league. Besser's missed time. Pedersen's missed time. Like, he's the glue holding this team together. I could not put Quinn Hughes there. So for me, I had Hellebuck, Hughes, Draisaitl as my 3-2-1. And again, McKinnon was my 4th. I think you could have an argument. There's a ton of guys here that could be here too, right? You could make an argument for Werenski, I think. You could make an argument for Kaprizov. Like, there's different guys you could make an argument for. I think there's a lot of guys having underrated years too. Like, I think Mitch Marner's having an insanely underrated year. But for me, again, out of a stacked field, these were the 3. And I do think it's kind of cool that, like, there was a goalie, a defenseman, and a forward. Like, how often do you get that? in heart, which is why I mean, it's been one of the most interesting heart classes in a while.
I guess I'm curious to see how it plays out by the end of the year. I think that's I mean, we're already 45 games in. I'm curious to see by game. I want to say by game 80, 81, we'll probably know by then who's probably.
And you know what's crazy? I haven't even talked about Kucherov, and Kucherov's been great, like he's always been. Like
he's scoring as per usual.
Yeah, like there. It's an absurd year. Like, can I say people are talking about expansion and how it might be a bad thing? I think we are at a peak of NHL talent in the league. Like, there are so many teams. The only thing that changes
I think it's scary because there's so many guys we left off our list here. Right? I mean, obviously, it's top 3. We'll do a more comprehensive one at the end of the year where we do top 5, I think. But, like, even within that top 5, there's going to be 4 or 5 guys we leave off that top 5 that, like, I want to say has at least not a legitimate argument, but has a decent argument for winning the Hart. But that just speaks to the talent of the NHL as a whole.
Yeah, it's been insane this year. And overall, like, the one thing I think the major takeaway from a lot of this is I think the NHL has become really talented over the last X amount of years, because you go through these ballots, there are guys we're struggling to get to 3 in a lot. You can talk about 4. I think the only issue might be goaltending a bit, but like the forwards and defensemen, they're just year to year coming in. Like, who knows? In a couple of years, you might have Macklin Celebrini in these conversations for the Hart, Lane Hudson for the Norris, and you're just adding to a glut of guys that are already there, right? And it's why I think going forward, I'm not going to hold, so and so didn't win an award, because I used to be a thing for Hall of Fame candidacies. I'm trying to hold it less against people because I think it's like,
harder to win one now, right?
To really separate yourself it's going to be hard. Like a guy like Heiskanen, X amount of years from now, like, I think he should, like, if he keeps up his defensive play, should have a Hall of Fame case, but it's like, you just might not know, right?
The problem is people are going to argue, he doesn't have a Norris, right? And that's going to hurt his case. Although I'm not going to lie with Heiskanen, I kind of wish he just scored a bit more. I feel like that's the only thing holding him back. He's so close. I think he's just so close. Like, if he has one year where he hits like 70 points, maybe 80 points if he's lucky, I think that's the year you give him the Norris. Despite, I don't know. I think the only thing that would stop you from giving it is if, let's say, Makar scores like, I don't know, 120 points or something ridiculous. Like, if Makar has like 100 or maybe like even just 90, you could make the argument that year if Heiskanen gets to like 80, he probably gets it, right?
But I could
somebody good defensively.
Like, there's so many good guys we left off, and I just want people to take that away. You can have your debates with, who's 1, who's 2, who's 3, but understand, like, it was kind of difficult because there's just so much good talent in the NHL, and I'm happy because when the league has more talent, it's always a better place to be.
Well, I mean, the product on the ice is always better too once there's more talent, right? Yeah. And as fans of hockey, you just want to see a better game in general.
Yeah, like, what's the most unwatchable team in the league? Chicago? And even then, on a certain day, Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville, maybe Nashville. I mean, but even if you say Chicago, like, at least watching Bedard,
there's still something
to
watch.
Yeah.
Agreed.
There's something to watch on every team, even the worst. Like, I want to say, like, the Sharks haven't been great this year, but like, you're there to watch Celebrini. Like, that's what it is
for sure. All right, moving on to our last thing for the day. We've been doing our guess that player.
Bro, don't remind me, man. I think I'm losing 2-0 right now.
So again, each week, what we do it for people that don't know. We do guess that player. We pull up a player's hockey reference page, and one of us has to guess who the player is. So it's 3 points if you get it right on the first guess. 2 points if you get it right after the first hint. 1 point if you get it right after the second hint. 0 points if obviously you get it wrong. I'm up 2-0 right now.
We've each only had one guess.
With one guess.
So.
And then at the end, I'll also let people know what the theme, because again, we kind of connected to something we talked about in a way. So I have mine. I do have to screen share with. Let me just pull it up here. 1 second. This one should be. I think this one should
be
for the
viewers. Just for the viewers, before my phone is right here, I'm going to toss it to the side just so people don't think I'm cheating.
Also, like the rule is at the end of the year, the winner gets a free jersey Mike sub from the loser. So like, there's no cheating because like, those subs aren't cheap.
Those subs are good and they aren't cheap.
Right. So
also in the comments, if you guys are go to jerseys Mike, leave a comment as to what your favorite sub is from there. I'm kind of curious to see.
I feel like it has to be the cheesesteak, right? Like, is there?
I like the cheesesteak, but I usually ask for what do I take out of it again? Frick, I can't remember. I
I
can't
take
remember
out the
all the ingredients.
peppers.
Not the peppers.
I know
For me,
you
it's
don't
like
like the jalapenos, I think.
jalapenos. Yeah, sorry, that's the one. Yeah, my
Yeah.
bad. See, I was trying to think of what I take out. There's a few things I used to take out, but
All right. So let me know. I'll screen share 1 second. Is it
all right. Let's see if it pops up. If it doesn't pop up, we might be having trouble, boys.
window. Okay. I think I got it. All right. Do you see that there? Do you?
Okay, I think I see it now. Okay. So this is a defenseman. I see the position. Ooh, no, wait. Okay, so Nashville. Okay, so let's see. So this guy started with Nashville at the beginning of his career. Started quite late.
Interesting thing though is late. Yeah.
26 is quite a late time to start. It makes me almost think. I want to say it's somebody undrafted. Okay, so let me think of So first of all, think of the themes. If it's, I don't want to say it's related to awards because this guy has no awards. So it's not. The theme is not awards.
Well, is there anyone that like jumps out immediately to you? I guess is the question.
So I don't want to say no. I don't know why I thought. Okay, no, not Dan. I don't have an immediate name that jumps out to me. Although I will say the 84 games should be a giveaway that one year because playing like more obviously between getting traded, but like the 84 games in that one year should be a telltale sign. I'm assuming New Jersey to Detroit. This was probably when Detroit was desperately trying to keep their playoff streak alive. So I feel like I don't want to say mediocre defensemen, but they were just doing everything they could to try to keep their playoff streak alive. What's the ASNHL? Is that All Star? No, it's not All Star, is it? Or is that?
Yeah, All Star just means like what you were considered for. It's weird because like when they do the All Star team, like the first team All Star kind of thing voting, I think the guys who get one vote will be like ranked. Don't worry about that. Doesn't matter. But, yeah.
So this guy peaked offensively in his first year, I think, because 53 is actually his career high. I just noticed that.
It's kind of funny because when you did Roman Hammer, like it was kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Because he peaked. Although, okay, let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that would give this away. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that give this away. So for people to see, my hands are here. Don't think I'm cheating. Because I have to stare at the screen, so it looks kind of odd. Let's see. 42 points. New Jersey. Minnesota to New Jersey. I'm trying to think of...
Also, one of the few guys traded twice in season, which doesn't happen a lot. Right?
I think the only other guy that I think of that got traded twice in a season, well, maybe not within season, but I think Thomas Vanek got traded twice, but I think got traded in the offseason. Then he got traded, I think, from the Islanders to, I think, Montreal. I could be wrong, but someone quote me if I got that wrong.
Funnily enough, like, Vanek's played for most... He hasn't played for Nashville, but, like, Vanek played for most of these teams, right? Minnesota, New York, Detroit... Yeah.
Okay, I'll take my first hint. I might need a hint on this. Okay. Let's see what it is.
Do you want the when he was drafted, or do you want where he was where he was born?
Let's go drafted.
Drafted by the Rangers in the 6th round.
Okay, so no, I'm not gonna get a year out of this. Okay. Although based on his, actually no, that's actually weird because like this is back in the day where you could get drafted from anywhere between like 18 to like 20 something.
Well, if I gave you the year, and some guys, that would just be a dead giveaway. Right?
Yeah, that giveaway. But although to be fair, this is one of somewhere in the 2000. He probably got drafted somewhere in the, could be 98. It could be wrong. I don't know. Let's see. New Jersey, Minnesota, the Devils, the Red Wings, and the Islanders.
It's a really interesting like career, right? It's a really.
I can't. The original thought when I saw Devils and Islanders, I would have thought maybe Andy Green, but I don't think he ever played for the Wild. Don't think he played for the Red Wings either, unless I'm wrong about that. He had good offensive point totals. It's not okay, so it's not Dan Hamhuis because Hamhuis played for the Canucks, I think. I'm trying to think of all the Nashville defensemen I know. Definitely not. I don't think it's Chemo Team. Yeah, I don't think it's him. It's not.
Do you want a second hint?
No, let's take a second hint.
So he was born in. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Most, but most Czechoslovakia. So he was born before it converted to the Czech Republic, but Czechoslovakia. So he's
That's
Czech.
not gonna help. Ugh, that's not gonna help either. Fuck. Czechoslovakia. Okay, so he could be Czech or Slovak. I just don't know which. Like, obviously, he's, when he was born, he was. I don't want to say both, but he could be either. I'm trying to think of Czech defenseman.
Well, he classifies as Czech Republic. Let me make that clear. Like on his hockey reference page, it's not a Slovakian flag.
I have an inkling of who this might be, but no. But then I don't think he played for the Wild. Fuck. I'll just tell you who I thought it was originally.
Okay.
I thought it was Marek Zidlicki, but just don't.
And you are correct.
Wait, no shot.
Yeah,
he played for the fucking Wild. What? Okay, I think I'm too close to the mic. I'm gonna blow everyone's eardrums. Okay, you probably should have told me that because I didn't say that was my guess. I don't know if that's cheating, quote unquote.
Oh,
but
well, it's fine.
Well, I didn't guess, but because I was because he was the only Czech defenseman I could think of, and I remember he played for the Devils at one point, but I don't remember him playing for the Red Wings.
Yeah, well, he only played 21 games, but
I know, but
you are correct. It is Marek Zidlicki. The reason I picked him, funnily enough, I found out his kid played in the World Junior Championship this year.
Oh, so the kid thing. Okay, you know what? I would have. The only other one I knew that played was Oliver Bonk, Radek Bonk. That's the only other one I can think of.
Well, that's why I couldn't tell you, his kid played in the... But yeah, I didn't know that. This made me feel old. I think it was... Oliver Bonk... Adam Zidlicki plays for the Czechia team, and he's Marek Zidlicki's son.
Canada, yes. Wow,
yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, I did not know that. That's actually, I don't remember. I might have missed it on the broadcast. They probably said it at least once or twice. Because usually with
so that's why I picked him this time, and he was one of those guys where he played long. What I thought would have given it away was, one, he came into the league at 26, and two, I thought you would have remembered the Nashville, Minnesota, because he was good. He was solid for both.
I forgot the Minnesota. I remember the Nashville. That's my issue. I didn't know he played for Minnesota. Because I remember he played really well. He was really good with Nashville. He was he wasn't a crazy point defenseman, but he put up some points. So that was what I remembered. I thought it was so. It's funny because I was thinking when I was first looking at it, when you mentioned the Czech part, I think, or the Czechoslovakia, I was like, I don't know very many Czech defensemen. I think Radek Bonk was one, but I was like, there's no
Radek Bonk's not even a defenseman.
Is Bonk not a defenseman? Am I
dumb? He played center,
am I just missing? Am I dumb? I always thought he was a defenseman. Maybe I'm just okay. Maybe it's just because his son plays defenseman, so maybe that's what I'm confusing.
What's interesting is I think Adam Zidlicki's a forward and Marek was a defenseman.
Okay, so it's the opposite for this one. Whereas okay, so that's actually isn't it the same? Oh no, wait, no, it's not the same thing because it's forward defenseman and then the Blanc case is defense or the forward. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I'll give it to you. Like I said, I thought this was a fun one to do. I just love the career, looking at the careers of.
Wait, so was the theme World Juniors? Was that what it was? It
was just something we had to talk about, and I didn't want to do an awards one, so I was like, let me just pick. And when I just was watching,
I looked at the awards and I was like, well, there's nothing here.
I was watching one of the broadcasts, and the playoffs, and somebody mentioned, I think it was the Czechia Canada game, and they mentioned Adam Zidlicki. And I was like, and they mentioned his dad. They're like, his dad was a former NHLer who was a good, a steady player for a long time. And I was like, there's no way his dad's Marek Zidlicki, because if that's it, I'm getting old. And
you were saying the same thing with was it with I think baseball, because we're baseball fans, right? You were mentioning was that draft with Jackson Holiday and then Drew Jones.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Just two was Matt Holiday a Hall of Famer? I don't remember.
No, Andrew Jones borderline. But
borderline. Okay.
Matt Holiday retired 6 years ago, and then Andrew Jones played most of my childhood, right? The 90s. But yeah,
Jeez.
No, it was just crazy reading that. But yeah, I'll give it to you. So I'm up 2-1. You got the next one.
I kind of feel nice. At least I have a point now. Although I don't know if that point kind of feels controversial, just because. Although I did say his name.
It's fine.
I did say his name at least, but.
But yeah, again, and I think I one thing I do like doing the research for some of these is going back and look at some of their careers, because they're guys, and again, not to make it too obvious, but I thought this one was an interesting one because, again, a steady guy who came into the league really late. And the funny thing is he was drafted in 2001. So he was drafted late. Like you drafted basically.
Yeah, because I was gonna say if
24.
you said 2003 and 4, he was 26, then that means he
Yeah.
was 23 when he was like 23, 22 when he was drafted. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Like that was back in the time where you could get drafted anywhere from like 18 to like 20 something.
Those late round picks, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember Pekka Rinne was one of those guys too.
Yeah.
Like just drafted at a super.
Also,
I think it was like
just an emphasis to Nashville. It's weird how they are now, but like back then, just being able to identify talent like that, like getting Zidlichky from the Rangers, right? Or Rinne as another example and stuff like that.
Yeah, they did that a lot. The Predators drafted a lot of older guys. Like they drafted Rinne when he was 22 in 04. So it's like I don't know. Don't know if the NHL will ever go back to that, but who knows?
It'd be cool. Like I want to see like the NFL where they're drafting all these older like quarterbacks. I want to see like some 27-year-old just get drafted. It'd be so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Yeah, good job, man. I'm up 2-1 going into the next one. Overall, anything else you want to talk about before we sign off here? Or?
No, don't. I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. Awards, World Juniors.
Pretty long episode. Yeah.
I finally guessed the player. Okay, I think my fear was I wouldn't guess anyone throughout the whole.
Relax.
I know, but I think my worry was I wouldn't be able to guess anyone throughout this whole year. That was my worry. I just lose like 0 to
You got it. Like you got the monkey off the back right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, guys. Well, yeah, that was our episode. It was a long one. Like I said, some World Junior talk, a lot of award talk, which you have to think about at some point during the year. Next week, we'll kind of get back to just regular, just talking about the league, what's going on, stuff like that.
Yep.
Again, the races are kind of interesting, both for worst team in the league and best team in the league and some of the playoff spots and just some of the performances too. And then maybe we'll look at like guys who might be traded, potentially
I was wondering if we put together a list of players of where they get traded, of who might get traded, like most likely get traded, and where they might get traded. Like I guess in terms of
we
fit.
could do that as well.
We'll
figure it out as we go. All right, guys. Again, appreciate you tuning in. I'm SJ. That's the co-host Willie Dubs.
We're signing out and have a great evening, guys. Peace.
Later.